Good evening and welcome to BronxTalk, the Bronx's flagship television talk show. We're on tape, so we are not taking phone calls tonight, but you can email comments to us at bronxtalk@hotmail.com, and we'll read those on the air during a future program. Well, over the years of this program, we've talked about the importance of grassroots and not-for-profit organizations to the borough of the Bronx. And in many communities, it's the not-for-profits that charter the course for community development. However, with the economy the way that it is, times have been difficult for not-for-profits. Coming up in October, two of tonight's guests will be running an event designed to raise money for not-for-profits and empower their agendas. So tonight, we talk about not-for-profit organizations and the dotORG-athon. We'll learn about what that means in just a moment. Please join me in welcoming the Executive Director of World Vision, Mr. Tim Bomgardner. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
And also from the New York City Clothing Bank, Luis Jimenez. Good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And we're also joined on the phone by the Executive Director of the Human Services Council, an umbrella group for not-for-profits, Mr. Michael Stoller. How are you doing, Mr. Stoller?
Hi, Gary.
Good, thank you for joining us. Let's start with the gentleman in the room, and you, Mr. Bomgardner. Give me an overall vision, which is funny because you are with World Vision, but an overall vision about not-for-profits, and in this economy, how are they doing?
Times are tough, and nonprofits, I think, feel it the most because they're the, like you mentioned, they are the grassroots organizations from the community trying to serve the community the best. And most of them are already operating on kind of shoestring budgets, very limited budgets, and when the economy gets bad, donors aren't able to give as much money, and so their funding dries up when the need increases. And so their work becomes more difficult whenever the demand is greater.
Can you say, and actually we're going to ask Mr. Stoller the same thing for the groups that he represents, can you say conclusively that the effect of this has been felt not only by the organizations themselves, but by the people that they serve?
Certainly, without a doubt. It's difficult. You know, families who may not have been in need before are in need now, in addition to the ones that were there before. And so those requests for services from nonprofits are increasing, and so they're definitely feeling that.
Give me an example. Is there an organization in mind, and again, we're going to go right to Mr. Stoller because he deals with a lot of city organizations, an organization in mind that you know has had to cut back something of substance?
There are a few schools that we work with that have had to cut back their summer programming or their after-school programming because they don't have the funding to continue those. A small nonprofit was providing a school after-school program for a school, and they had to reduce the number of kids that they have because they didn't have enough staff to be able to support it. So they're reducing services.
Mr. Jimenez, you were right on the front lines working with a not-for-profit organization. First of all, just to let people know, what does the Clothing Bank do? And then we'll ask your status update as well.
Sure. The New York City Clothing Bank for the past 22 years has been getting new clothes donated from manufacturers, retailers, and wholesalers, and then making them available to those needy populations within the city of New York. We do this by connecting to the small nonprofits who are on the front line working with mostly the homeless population and the underserved populations of New York City.
And so how are you doing? I mean, lay it out.
Well, it's been very difficult for us this past year. We lost a good chunk of our funding just recently with the city cutbacks. So we had to cut back ourselves. We went from a staff of 5 down to a staff of 3 when the demands for our services have actually increased. So
there are more people who need some of the clothes and other items that you circulate and distribute, and yet you're able less to serve them.
Yes, but fortunately, we've gotten a lot of volunteers sign up for, especially this past summer. Our volunteer service hours have almost tripled, and we use them almost exclusively now to provide the kind of services that are being asked of us.
Well, maybe in some ways, during difficult times, people are more ready to pony up, as it were. Mr. Stoller, let's talk to you, and we'll basically go the same line of questioning. Tell me about the organizations that you represent, and how are they doing during this economy?
Well, it's the same as the other speaker said. The Human Services Council represents all the not-for-profit social service agencies in the city. So it ranges from really big ones like the Red Cross to small mom-and-pop community-based organizations. There have been massive layoffs. We're expecting some of the smaller organizations to close altogether. Gary, you asked for specific examples. We know that food banks the usage of food banks has gone way up. Domestic violence is up. You know, when people lose their jobs, the stress at home gets overwhelming, and then unfortunately they sometimes take it out on the spouse or the kids. For us, for all of us, it's the perfect storm. You know, the government is cutting back because taxes are down. Foundations are cutting back because of the crash in the stock market. Bernie Madoff certainly didn't help because he killed off a lot of the funding. So while all of that has gone down, the need has gone up. So everybody's stretched really thin.
Let me ask you, you brought up something interesting that I hadn't thought about. We all read about Bernie Madoff and we know what he did. You're saying you can actually feel and see the economic downfall and the effect of what he did?
You bet. There's some foundations, one of them is called JET, I can't remember the other one, some foundations that had their money with Madoff, thinking it was a legitimate investment, that are gone. The foundations actually disappeared. And a lot of our members, well, not a lot, but some of our members who had money invested through Madoff lost it.
You know,
and
it's interesting.
A lot of the people who donated money to them had money with Madoff and lost it. So it was a chain.
You know, it's interesting that you say that because I think a lot of people in the general public read about it and they've heard about it, and it's been in political cartoons and everything else, but they, and aside from individuals losing money, I guess maybe they don't perceive that it's had that kind of effect on things that might directly affect them. But what have organizations had to do, and in what ways has the people that they serve been affected by a lot of the cutbacks and the economic climate you've been talking about?
Well, there have been a lot of layoffs. From the large organizations, United Way laid people off, Red Cross. We're expecting some of the small agencies to close. It's sort of like Luis said. Somehow we're able to take care of the people as best we can. Right. But there are programs that are closing. There were definitely summer programs that we thought were going to run that weren't running.
And
there's more need. It takes more time to get served.
Right.
We're not exactly sure yet how the clients are impacted, but we know it's going to happen because, you just do so much with fewer people on staff.
I realize that you don't necessarily deal on the grassroots level because you work more on the structure level and the systems level. But do you hear from constituents and people that the organizations serve that what am I supposed to do with my son or daughter this summer, those kinds of very basic things?
We've been hearing anecdotal stuff. You're right, we're removed from, we don't do the direct service, we work for the providers. But yeah, we've been hearing anecdotal stuff like that, sure.